Hello there, my name is Alicia, aka Edmiston Creations, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I am wearing a freshly sewn bedrock tee. I sewed this out of some knit fabric from Ewe Fibers, and I really love it. It's the color fungi. And I just love it. It's this really earthy brown, but it has a green undertone. So this is definitely going to be one of my favorite tees to wear this season. I'll be wearing it a lot hiking and knitting and walking. So I'm super excited about it. I'm also wearing some chanterelle sweatpants. So I think I might have been wearing these the last time I recorded. I don't know. It's been a while. I have just been busy in the throes of life. Again, not a bad busy or anything like that, just present and really doing all the things. I've been making a lot of things. My kids had spring break over like the second week of March, and we had a stomach bug come through our house, which was not fun. But over that spring break, I sewed not one, not two, but 3 pairs of jeans. And I have all 3 of them here with me. And so I was going to, I'll show each of these pairs of jeans, and I wanted to talk a bit about tips for sewing denim or making your own pair of jeans that I have learned just kind of over the course of my experience of just being completely obsessed with sewing jeans. And sewing denim, especially like heavyweight, we're talking 10 ounces and heavier, that can be kind of intimidating, and sometimes your machine may be finicky, but as I've been getting into it, there are ways to overcome those. So let's dive in. I started my first pair of jeans that I sewed over the spring break was a third pair of Just My Luck jeans. So this is them. They have been well loved and worn. I made these with some herringbone denim from Ewe Fibers. Ewe Fibers is sold out of this denim right now, but they're getting more in stock. So if you would like to sew some herringbone denim, this is kind of what it looks like, more up close. And it is a dream to sew with. I chose to sew these with like this nice burnt orange top stitching thread, and I embroidered hearts on the pockets, and I had a lot of fun embroidering different patterns on the back. This is just kind of a fun deco stitch. This is a little line of hearts, and this is just like a little squiggly line. And the top line, if you can see, is some scissors. It's kind of hard to see, and I apologize for the shadow casted onto the pocket, but hopefully you can see that. So yeah, this pattern, I love the Just My Luck jeans pattern. I think it's a very polished, true to form, like blue jean pattern. Your front pants pockets are actually, I use linen scraps for my pockets on all 3 pairs. You do a French seam type pocket with like a backing here. So, your pockets are not denim, and that reduces a lot of bulk in your front, which is super cool. And then, you have such a fun shape with this pant with darts at the knees, and then like long darts up the front pant leg. I wanted to say forearm, but that like front shin bone. whatever, anatomy. So anyway, these are just super fun. I love the yoke back in the pant, and the way that I love the way that she sews the back pockets. Like you go, you start here, go down and edge stitch all the way around, and then draw a line in that comes in. It starts at 5/8 of an inch out and comes into 3/8 of an inch and comes across, and then you finish up your pocket up here. So it kind of eliminates the need for bar tacks. I mean, you can do bar tacks if you want to, but I really love that. I think it just makes just a really nice polished looking pair of pants. Like all of the stitching lines are really clean on the back, and you do kind of a similar style, like top stitch down and around and over on the little coin pocket too. If you can see, your stitching starts here, you edge stitch down and around, the pocket is down into the pant and come around. Doot, doot. So such a cute little pair of pants. So I'm just going to talk about each of these first, and then I'll get into like the tips that I've learned with sewing denim, some fit adjustments that I personally make, you know, just kind of things like that. So, and I'll talk about where I kind of picked up each of my tips from. So my next pair is a pair of Oxbow pants. Oh my God. I'm so excited for these. So the Just My Luck jeans are a size 2. I made some adjustments to the back rise, but, and I'll talk about that. I make adjustments to the back rise in all of my pants. Well, I just can't get the button through to hold these together. I have not worn these yet. So my buttonhole hasn't been used a whole lot. I've been waiting to get some nicer photographs of these. I've worn them in the house, like whenever I made them, but these are the Oxbow pants. I believe these are the wide leg version, like wide leg full length version. I think that's view A. OMG, but you know, so whatever. You get what I'm saying. They're the wide leg full length version. So I love the Oxbows. I love that in the front you have these cute little patch pockets. I took the opportunity to embroider some hot pink hearts across the back. I mean, with this is Merchant & Mills workwear denim from Ewe Fibers, a super nice dark wash. And I also embroidered my back pockets. Just this dark denim, it was too good to like not embroider something on it. I chose to do some white top stitching thread, or I think it's like a whitish gray, so it would really stand out. These are a size 6 in the Oxbows, and I did adjust the back rise a bit, you know, to fit my body. That was the only adjustment that I made for the fit. And I just love the clean stitching lines on these. A dart pant in the back just fits really, really well. Very easy to make mods with, versus I think a yoke pant like the Just My Luck jeans, if you're making adjustments to the back rise, you just need to think it through a little bit more. But the Oxbow pants, I found, one thing that I think Sew House 7 does really, really well is she spelled out fit adjustments for you. Like there's a full page of fit adjustments for pants, and I really appreciated that. She talks about different ways to make a full rise, like taking a wedge out of the pant and everything. So I would highly recommend this pattern for, you know, getting to know some general fit adjustments. They're a lot more specific than what I've seen in other patterns. So, anyway, and so these are, like I said, the wide leg full length version. I did a really high cuff. I kind of, for my hem, I borrowed that a bit from the Pinyon pant, and the cropped version of these also has like a nice thick hem, and I just really love that. So I did that on these full length pants, and they are super comfy. You may notice on my Just My Luck jeans and this pair, I did not do belt loops. That was intentional. You know, I could always add belt loops too, because in these patterns, you put the belt loops on like last, like after the waistband is sewn like this. But honestly, I don't really wear a lot of belts. It might be once in a blue moon. And I kind of like just kind of the clean waistline. This is totally a personal preference, like just the clean lines of the waistband on these pants. I just think it really makes the top stitching shine a bit more. Now, I mean, you may think it looks weird without belt loops, and that's totally cool too. Like I said, I put belt loops on. I put belt loops on sometimes, not all the time. And these two pairs, I chose not to. So, Oxbow pants. And I'm very excited. I'm going to sew another pair of the cropped version Oxbows with some red railroad denim with Gudrun Johnston in a few weeks. So, very excited about those. The Oxbows are definitely one of my favorite jeans patterns. Okay, now lastly, I have not shown these at all anywhere, like not even a peep, really, a tiny peep on Instagram. That's it. But these are my finished Falconer pants by Helen's Closet. And OMG, I put on that stay. I'm just gonna hold them. That what do you call it? The fray check stuff on my, like, that's what makes it so stiff. These pants are so comfortable. So I'm just gonna hold them up as best I can without them buttoned. These are the Falconer pants by Helen's Closet. I love this pattern. Whenever she first sneak peeked it, wearing her triangle patchwork. So these have a side panel on the side, and that's where your pocket is. And you know, I of course decided to do a little leaf embroider there. I just love the earthiness of this denim, which is Merchant & Mills, also from Ewe Fibers. I loved the sneak peek version of this pant, and she had this patchwork like triangle panel down the side, which I'm totally doing a patchwork version of these pants, like a patchwork panel of these pants in the future. That's a future me project. As soon as this pattern was released, I ordered it, I printed it at home, and I made them. And I made the barrel leg version. OMG, like the waist fits so great. I did make an adjustment to my back rise. I took a wedge out of the back, but that's just what I need to fit my body. Other than that, this is a size 8 with that wedge taken out. I think I shortened the length like an inch to fit me because I'm short. And here's the bottom. I loved doing 2 lines of top stitching for my hem. I just think I use this like sandy, like cream color, and I love how these turned out. Love how they turned out, and they fit so well. I definitely plan on like getting some proper photos of my Oxbows and the Falconers to share on social media. Just haven't done it yet. Like I said, I've just been making all the things. I've been knitting, I've been sewing, I've been playing with my kids. and, you know, doing all the mom things, and yeah, so it just hasn't happened yet, but it will. So let's talk about the tips that I have learned sewing these pants. These different pairs of pants, I have picked up tips and tricks to sewing denim. So the first one, which may or may not be, like, look, March is my 2-year sew anniversary. So I have officially been sewing for 2 years now. So I am still very new and learning all the things, and I low-key love that. I love learning all the things. So the first thing that I learned whenever sewing like heavier fabrics is I can use this fun top stitching thread. This is Gutermann top stitching thread. This top stitching thread is thicker in weight than like a typical, just what I'm gonna sew to construct like my seams and finish my seams on the serger. So this thicker thread really shows up nicely, and using top stitching thread, the very first time I ever used top stitching thread was with the Pinyon pants, and the Pinyon pants came out last fall. So that is really, top stitching thread and the Pinyon pants pattern is really what started my love of sewing heavier bottom weight fabrics. And I'm definitely so grateful for that obsession. This will reveal how new I am to sewing. When I first started using top stitching thread, I put the top stitching thread in, you know, threaded my machine. I also wound my bobbin with top stitching thread. It worked. I mean, my first couple pairs of Pinyon pants, I used the top stitching thread in my, you know, upper like needle, but also in my bobbin casing. It wasn't until I read in a pattern later that you can just use, like, I think it was the Oxbow pants, honestly. Just use your regular thread, like for construction, in your bobbin casing. Don't switch out. Don't use your thick top stitching thread in the bobbin. I am sharing this as one of my tips because I didn't know it until I just kind of, you know, stumbled upon that. But yeah, you can use your regular, just your regular polyester or cotton construction thread in your bobbin casing, and you use your thick top stitching thread, you know, threaded through your machine and your needle. And it is a lot of fun to play with different colors for your top stitching. So that is tip number 1. Tip number 2, which most patterns mention this, is definitely use a jeans needle. These are Janome jeans needles because I have a Janome Skyline S6. So this is specific for the Janome machine. But I also love Oregon jeans needles. And if you order any like make the look kits from Ewe Fibers, they include an Oregon jeans needle like in with your kit, like as a fresh needle for your machine. So these are just, I mean, using the heavier denim needle really does help your machine to stitch nicely through the thicker threads. So I stumbled upon one of my favorite tips ever for sewing jeans is from the Just My Luck jeans pattern. She recommends sewing a basting stitch around your edge stitching, anywhere you have edge stitching, before you top stitch it. So what does that mean? For example, like whenever I go to hem my pants, like, you know, I've got this really nice pretty top stitching thread that shows. However, you know, for my top stitching thread to show, I need to feed it through the machine, like, you know, and sew from the top, which I don't know how many times I have hemmed pants and I with, you know, so I've got them folded under my couple of times to the hem length that I want, and I'll sew around, and there will be like this much of the hem that I didn't catch the, you know, like I didn't catch and sew the hem. And oh my gosh, it would drive me crazy to unpick that section and like re-sew. And sometimes there could be a couple of places. Now, if I only missed like this much of the hem, like catching that much of the hem, I wouldn't worry about it. But there would be plenty of times where I would miss like a section like this long, or, you know, this long, and in a couple of places on my hem. And I just felt like I needed to fix those. Don't do that anymore. Sew a basting stitch around. So what I mean by that is I would actually hem my pants with this. I used white construction thread to sew these pants. So I sewed my hem with my white construction stitch thread in my Janome machine. And then I have my heavy duty Singer machine here that I just use it for top stitching only. So I have my top stitching thread set up here. And then I have a line. Before I sewed my hem on these, I had a white line of stitching all the way around that I would just top stitch right over. So I had a sewing line. Like, what a brilliant idea. Like top stitch, or not top stitch, based stitch. I mean, and I used my regular stitch length, and I just would edge stitch with my regular thread, and then I had a sewing line guide to be able to sew right over that. And especially if if my construction stitch line, if my construction thread was like a navy blue, then I mean, you hardly see it at all, like from a distance. You just top stitch right over it. Now I've been top stitching a lot, so I can pretty much, you know, you can see I just sewed right over that basting stitch in my pant with the top stitch thread, and you can't see it. But what a great way to like not have that headache anymore. I love that tip so much. The other tip for sewing denim that I picked up on from both the Oxbow pants and the Just My Luck jeans, maybe and the Falconer pants too, for whenever you're sewing your fly here, you have, you know, this fly stitching. I'll use the Oxbow pants because you can just see the line better. So you have this nice J line to sew for your fly, and that's all top stitching. These patterns, like this is the Falconer pants top stitching template, included a template to be able to draw in a nice curved line for your fly. Now, since sewing these, like if a pattern includes a top stitching template, great. If they don't include it, just use the pattern piece for your fly. Like whenever you cut out this piece, just use your pattern piece to draw your line, your J line on for your fly. And it just makes the actual fly itself so nice and so much easier to sew. I remember with like the first couple pair of Pinyon pants that I sewed, I hand drew in that line, that J line on the fly, and I kind of used my finger to be able to kind of like feel the fly pattern piece around here to make my curve. And I just remember how frustrated I would get doing that by hand. Now I just use the pattern piece to be able to draw that line in, and it makes a nice crisp line to follow in your sewing. So 10 out of 10, totally recommend that. My next tip for sewing heavier fabrics, or denim pants is from the Just My Luck jeans. I totally blame Forest and Thread for my complete obsession with embroidering things now. But like, she had this little tip whenever you were doing the back pants pockets, like, this is a good place in the pattern to maybe do some embroidery or add that to your pockets if you want. And I'm like, why had I never thought of that before? So what I do is, with any pattern that I sew, I always save like scrap pieces of the actual fabric that I am sewing with. And I use it for like practice stitching. Like if I'm going to do a buttonhole, that's what I will use to practice doing some buttonholes to see what they look like, before actually putting them on my finished garment or my piece that I'm sewing. So I used this is from the cow print, Just My Luck jeans that I sewed, but I started playing around with different embroidery stitches. These are little cars. My son wanted me to try that stitch out on my machine, and the waves, those did make it onto my Oxbow pants. And this is the stitching that I did, like playing around with different stitches and different colors of hearts and things like that to possibly put on my Oxbow pants. My daughter really liked the snowflake. And this one is like a little flower tulip pattern. The embroidery thread that I used for my Oxbow pants is all hand dyed embroidery thread that was given to me for Christmas this year from Patty. She is Woolly Witch on Instagram. She is the coolest, and just so thoughtful. She knows that I love sewing, and so she gave me this hand dyed embroidery thread for my sewing machine, and it has been such a joy to use these different beautifully dyed embroidery threads to have such unique variation and colors come out for my garments. So very much love these. So this is all hand dyed embroidery thread that was used on these. I love the saturation of the pink on there, and on the Falconer pants, this is also hand-dyed embroidery thread that Patty gave me. And I love, like, there's a little bit, like, there's some green and burgundy in this thread. So it just gives the embroidery some nice depth. And, you know, honestly, so with these pants, I use this is just some tan embroidery thread from my local quilt shop, A Quilting Situation. And this is just some Gutermann Sew All thread. So this is not embroidery thread at all. So that just shows you that, I mean, it's still like, play around with what threads you've got, but I highly, highly, highly recommend, if you can do some decorative stitching on your machine, think about where you can maybe add that into your sewing projects and make them just a little bit more unique and special for you. That has been such a joy and just such a gift. So my next tip for sewing denim is probably my favorite. Okay. I picked up this tip from a couple of places, but the very first place that I read it was in the Block Party Pants pattern by Fluid Plus Drape. This pants pattern, it's an elastic waisted pattern that uses either pre-quilted fabric or quilted fabric that like cut up an old quilt, or maybe you quilt your own panels and stuff to make these pants. But anyway, it's made for thick fabric, and she recommends, or one of her tips is to use a hammer to hammer your thick seams together. And I was like, oh my God, that would help so much flat felling denim, especially like on the Just My Luck jeans right here, where this join is. You've got a flat fell seam with the yoke pieces. I struck the first couple of pairs that I sewed. I really struggled getting a nice stitching line across that section of the pant. Using a hammer, I just laid this on my sewing surface and hammered it just a few times. And what it does is it flattens out those threads, and it makes it so much easier for the machine to take it through. I was so impressed. I was like, wow. And it is so satisfying to just hammer something really hard. So like, I had so much fun with this. I mean, I already use a hammer to do like my tack buttons on all of my jeans, but I was like, well, this is just such a great idea, especially for like the fly, whenever to put bar tacks, like here, I would struggle sewing there. And the fly join is another spot that I would struggle. Using the hammer on those spots really does help sew them much better. So get your hammers out and have some fun. My next tip, a Gina-majig. This is a life-changing piece of plastic. This is by Dritz. I have seen Gina-majigs a couple of places and online, and I'm like, what do you do with this? I don't understand. So what you do with this object is, as you are sewing on your sewing machine, this is a serger, but basically, you know, obviously this is a serger, but as you're sewing, you lift up your your presser foot, and you put the Gina-majig in behind your presser foot, and then set your presser foot down, and your presser foot will be on either side of this area of the Gina-majig. And basically what it does is, as you are sewing along, like again, at that yoke join on the back of the Just My Luck jeans, or if I'm coming up to a bulky like bump here on my hem of pants, you put the Gina-majig in behind your presser foot as you're sewing. And what it does, my friend Pikasha actually said it great, like it's like hydraulics for your sewing machine. It lifts the presser foot up, so it's not going uphill and then downhill anymore. It lifts it up so it sews on an even surface across it, and you can keep scooting this Gina-majig in behind as it sews forward. I guess you could also put the Gina-majig in from the to the presser foot from the front. I've always put it in behind, so I haven't tried it the other way. But what it does is, by lifting it up, it keeps an even pressure on the top of your on the top of the presser foot, so it will sew right across that big thick piece of fabric and go over it without any issue. And then once you get over the little mountain of, thicker joined seams, you just take this out and you keep sewing around or whatever. This little piece I used to sew, if you noticed on my Falconer pants, I did put belt loops. and I used my Jig to sew on all the tops of my belt loops. So basically, like on these pants, the belt loops were sewn into the waistband first, and then you tacked them down here. I used the Jig to tack them down at the base, and then you fold under. You can see here, you fold under your belt loop and then sew it down. So I folded under my belt loop, hammered it so it flattened out the thickness of those fibers as much as possible. And then I used my Jig in the machine to sew, and it sewed great. No struggle like whatsoever using this. And they're like $6. I mean, it's like, I just never knew $6 could change my life like that. So that is like the definite, like, big tip I have for sewing thick fabrics. Now, I got this tip from the 11s backpack course by Sew Liberated. I did sew an 11s backpack and it is done. I am waiting. I need one more little piece of hardware to fully finish it. I'm not ready to share it yet, but it is so, it's just so perfect and I can't wait to share. I've had so much fun doing the 11s backpack course by Sew Liberated and learning all these quilting skills and how to sew with thicker fabrics. And like I said, like they mentioned using a hammer in that course, the Jig, a sewing awl, like this little tool also helps, like, you know, you can hold like things as they're feeding into the machine and not worry about sewing off your finger, which, you know, I kind of like that. And this is really helpful. I've used this tool with sewing heavyweight denim, but also with knit fabrics too that can like wiggle around like this tee. So they recommended using an awl, a hammer. I feel like there was another tip. Oh, the use of a walking foot. Now, so that's the very last tip that I have for you for sewing heavyweight fabrics. The Sew Liberated course recommended the use of a walking foot, and I have, you know, if you have one, you definitely don't have to have one. These pants that I showed you today, I did not use a walking foot to sew any of them. I figured out how to use a walking foot. My Janome came with a walking foot and I just hadn't like played around with my manual to figure out how to use it. When I was doing the 11s backpack course, I figured out how to use my walking foot for the quilting panels on my backpack. And it has opened up a whole new world of sewing accuracy for me. So definitely a walking foot will help feeding thicker fabrics like denim. And when I sew jeans from now on, I probably will use my walking foot. I don't think that'll be a hard and fast 100% of the time, but a walking foot does help feed thicker fabrics through. I had no issues sewing my 11s backpack with thick canvas, thick quilted panels. I used the Jig in a couple of instances with like having to sew through webbing and all of that. With my walking foot, I used this and I had no issues whatsoever sewing through that thickness. And I used my walking foot to sew this tee, for instance, and I just think with knit fabric, it really helps sew nice crisp lines. So anyway, that is all the tips I have for you in sewing thicker fabrics. I hope that you give sewing some jeans a try. If like sewing jeans is too intimidating, maybe try out the 11s backpack. The course is really helpful if sewing a bag seems like something crazy over the top that you would never do. Or you could try like sewing a tote bag, like just find a tote bag pattern, and you could try sewing a tote bag pattern with some heavyweight denim and see how you like that. Sewing jeans is not for everyone. Sewing bags and stuff like that is not for everyone. And so if that's not your cup of tea, that's totally fine. But at any rate, I hope that the things that I have shared through my own experience of struggle and strife are helpful, and I hope it just unlocks a door of creativity for you. Play around with your decorative stitching and see like what you come up with. If you decide to do any kind of embroidery or sew your first pair of jeans or your 100th pair of jeans, tag me or on Instagram or mention me on Instagram so I can be sure that I don't miss it, and I would love to see your projects. That is one of the most favorite things of mine, is like just sharing our creativity with one another and lifting each other up. So the world can definitely use more of that. I hope that no matter where you are today in the world, that peace finds you. And if you would like to get in touch with me, all the ways to get in touch with me will be linked in the show notes. Please reach out, comment on this video, and I will get back to you. Until next time, happy mindful making.